These things are designed to be driven with the windows down. It's all power. Boom, look at that. Little power ventilation. Whoa. And that totally changes the little bit of wind noise. So this car, the hood alone, 70 inches long. This hood is so long. So this was a unibody car, almost like the 56 Thunderbird. So they did it because they wanted the car to look really low to the ground. So basically the frame rails, or the subframe rails, or whatever you want to call them, the unibody rails, tuck. That's why the door sill, or these rocker sills, are so high and the floors are so low. It's hard to believe that they designed this car in 1953. It's really almost a timeless design.
Sometimes we look back to go ahead. Only a decade or so ago, there was a car that gained such wide acceptance that it became a classic in its own time. When the Ford people were ready to produce a new kind of car of tomorrow that was conceived to be the finest in the world, it had an enviable reputation before it was born, because they called it the Continental. Great new engineering in power and construction were worked out. The problem was this: how to create a new Continental with the rakish charm of the classic, and still have an automobile to inspire future stylists for years to come. The design went through development stages. Finally, one that captured the best of everything emerged.
We noticed that the exhaust comes out through these tips, through the bumper, almost like the Thunderbird. Corvettes at the time were similar. This is a Continental Mark II, it's called. It's the second evolution of the Continental, and this is kind of became really common with Ford to have this, almost looks like a spare tire is in the trunk. They used that, man, probably until the 80s in all their Continentals. The air conditioning was actually in the trunk of this car, and so these are functional scoops that direct air in through the quarter panels and through all the AC ducting, and then it comes up through the roof and into the headliner. So these things had a price of just about $10,000, and in today's money that's over $100,000. The only option was air conditioning, and that was about $600, but again today that's around $6,500. And that was it. 368 cubic inch motor. Let's look at this motor. This is called the Y block. Look at this engine. Oh, those are so bright, those lights. And of course these are factory finned valve covers, factory cold ram air. It's a factory 4-barrel. Look at this 4-barrel intake. It's got power steering. It has power brakes. Look at the exhaust. So this is factory. The exhaust goes out through the fender, comes down behind the fender, and all the way down the side of the car like that. Look, that's part of the exhaust pipe right there. It runs right down in between the fender and that inner frame rail, or it's a unibody frame rail. That's the battery. That's a giant battery. We got fan here. This again is for airflow into the car. There's another fan there. This is for the passenger for airflow. Again, the exhaust, factory dual exhaust, comes right down in the fender and shoots right down. Look at these big old factory 15-inch tires. This is the fuse panel. That's the coil that runs the spark. The distributor's in the back. It's got a high performance distributor with dual vacuum ports for advance. This is a glass bottle for windshield washer fluid. Look at that AC air compressor. That's a monster. This is all AC componentry. It's a big air conditioner condenser. This has been converted to electric windshield wipers. From factory it did not have electric wipers, it would have had vacuum wipers. It's just amazing, the engineering for its time.
It had all begun back in 1939, when Edsel Ford, Bill's father, had designed a very special car. At first, it was not intended to be manufactured and sold. It was built as Edsel Ford's personal automobile. It was called the Lincoln Continental. It became a classic in its own time. Yet in all, only 5,322 were ever built. With the tremendous demand for volume-produced automobiles after World War II, manufacture of the Continental was suspended in 1948. But it never really passed from the scene. Even fan clubs of Lincoln Continental owners were organized, and people kept asking, when are they going to start making the Continental again?
This car has had a lot of work done at our shop. We have a really good old school radiator guy, so the radiator's been cooked and cleaned and repaired. Carburetor's been rebuilt, of course. Brake system's been done, as you can tell. The power booster and master cylinder have been replaced. Little by little, every year, little projects. Ford set up its own factory just to build these cars, and they created their own assembly line that put the car like on a cart and it would travel, and it was handmade. And so they made 3,000 of these total between 56 and 57. The other thing that's interesting, I didn't show you under the hood, but it's similar to some of the cars in the 50s where the fenders are not really unboltable. Let me pop the hood one more time. Notice everything's welded and finished. So if you ever had to replace body panels on this car, the only things that really unbolt are the hood, the doors, and the trunk lid. Everything else is all one piece. Basically a seamless design. I think that this car looks so beautiful and so still retains like a modern look. I mean, you drive this thing down the road, you can tell it's from the 50s, but at the same time you wouldn't necessarily be able to really nail what year it's from if you weren't a car person. But I think the roof is a little tall. It looks like a top hat. It definitely has like an English car design to me, like it was a coupe. I think if the roof line was a touch lower, this thing would just really look modern. This car was so expensive they were competing with Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and that's why it was handmade. Every car that came off the assembly line was wet sanded and hand buffed and polished. They say that Ford lost $1,000 on every one they built. They were more expensive than the Cadillac. It was a massively expensive car in its era. And because of that, Elvis Presley had one, Frank Sinatra had one. The list goes on. Barry Goldwater, all these famous, influential people that had these when they were new. And what a car. All the windows are power, the seats power. I'll show you what it looks like in the trunk. What a cool Continental, the crest, the Lincoln crest. Isn't that something? This customer takes this car to shows, so he wants to have something people can look at. So the spare tire is truly inside as opposed to the Thunderbird. where it was on the outside. The Continental kit, they called it. But the Continental put it inside the trunk, as you can see. Chevy did it on some of their models too. Taillight opens. That's where you fill it up with fuel. That antenna from factory, this is back in the 50s when the hot rodders would French. They called it Frenching it in. This is a factory Frenched in power antenna. The headlights from factory seem to be Frenched in. They're tucked back inside. Look at this grill. But it's very subdued as well. A lot of the cars, 56 we're talking about, think about a Cadillac. Cadillac started getting chrome everywhere, and Lincoln, they went really understated here. In the 50s, everybody thought airplanes were super cool, and so a lot of this stuff was airplane inspired. So you had the machined gauges. They almost look like a beautiful watch. Look at, if you can see, it's getting dusk out here. You can see like the watch face, beautiful for your fuel and all that. Then you got your speedometer, obviously, that goes up to 140 miles an hour, made you feel like you're in a really fast car. You have your clock. You got your tachometer, which is pretty awesome. You don't always have tachometers nowadays. This steering wheel is a work of art. Got the horn ring. An amazing horn, sounds like a train. It's like ivory. I'm sure it's not actual ivory. So look at this turn indicator. So cool. This is the shift knob. I mean, these are just 50s Art Deco pieces. They're so neat. Everything is this looks like it's like behind some sort of a clear Lexan of some sort, but it looks like it'd be bumpy to touch, but it's not. This whole, it follows it all on here. Look at this radio. So you have the town and country radio. So we're in the town. Let's see if there's any good channels. The radio actually works. That is wild, isn't it? Then if you want to shut your radio off, just shut it off. We got a lighter because no 50s car would be complete if everyone didn't smoke. We got wiper and washer. We got our headlights. Notice here, this is pretty cool, all airplane inspired. And this is how we control our air conditioning and our ventilation. We got, you know, this is your defrost, this is your temperature. Now we got a glove box. I don't know how to open it. Whoa, what a giant glove box that is. That is literally a massive glove box. Holy smoke. That is so cool. That is just very robust. Oh, jeez. These door handles are so amazing. This would be your power window and your power vent window. So this is how you open the door. Pull this back just like an airplane. This door is gigantic. And look at how futuristic this was. This is for heat. Comes through the door panel and exits down there for the rear seat passengers. So we're taking this car on a test drive, and I want you to just really get a good look over this hood. This thing is amazing. When you think of the history behind this car and how they were trying to make it so futuristic and modern. She was designed in 1953. So you have to put yourself back in the early 50s, and they were trying to think of what would feel really modern and futuristic. 285 horsepower from factory. 1957 they bumped it up to 300 horse, and that was just unheard of in that era. Now everything has way more power than that. But what a change, you know, 56 and 57 to have that kind of horsepower. And you get into the 70s, late 70s, with all the gas rationing. Some of the Ford V8s were only 140 horsepower. So it was the heaviest car produced in this year. Weighed almost 5,000 pounds. It would go over 100 miles an hour, top speed of 118. Right now we're going basically 50 miles an hour. This car was built just to glide down the road. This is not a drag race car whatsoever. This was meant to just be so heavy and just cruise. This is my favorite back road. If you watch any of my other reviews, we always drive the same road. I don't know if you'll notice, one of the cars I drove, we talked about how this road was getting a little bumpy. This car is so stinking heavy, it just flattens all the bumps. This is the bumpy section, and you cannot feel the bumps at all. It just floats. It's so heavy, you can feel it. Nowadays, for something to be almost 5,000 pounds, you're in like a truck category. I don't know that any cars, maybe a Tesla with all those batteries, I don't know that they even weigh 5,000. I know like a diesel Super Duty crew cab is probably 6,500, 7,000 pounds. So these are the curves that we drive around. Some cars we downshift and really go racing around this curve. This car we're slowing down, but it handles it fine. This was the era that had, this was an automatic transmission. And Lincoln, of course, had a cool name for their automatic. It was something like, it was a 3-speed automatic. You can tell we're doing some steering inputs. But you just do not see these cars in the wild. What a beautiful night. Beautiful drive. I'm just taking it on a test drive. I'm going to turn around up here, which is where we always do. This is our test drive route. And anytime we service a customer's car, we just run it up the road and back, make sure that this one got some exhaust repair, a muffler. Just want to make sure it doesn't rattle or vibrate against any of the frame. The exhaust is really routed kind of in an unusual way. These have big drum brakes. Pulls a little bit to the right. Acceleration is fairly lazy. I'm not going to floor it. I'm just going to do about half to 3/4 throttle. Starts in first gear. Feels like you're driving a boat. We're at 50, 55, 60. Shifts into high. I let off the throttle a little bit to get it to shift. We'll have to see how long that took. Probably about 15 or 20 seconds, but again, I am not giving it hard gas at all. I just want to make sure it shifts properly and transmission doesn't flare shift or slip. What a beautiful night for a drive. This just drives so effortlessly. Power steering is assisted. It's overly assisted, but it's still fine. Like, I can tell where the wheels are, especially going in curves. It gives you enough feedback. It's actually very nice.
A new car, a new company division. Now, a whole new plant to be built. And production in that new plant on the expressway just out of Dearborn is unlike any other production operation in the automobile industry. Relatively few cars are finished each day. Each individual engine is checked out on the dynamometer. Every body is first assembled and checked, then taken apart, numbered, and the sections painted as a set, assigned to one particular car. A painstaking painting process with 4 double coats of paint. Each double coat is sanded and baked before the next is applied. Wheel covers are hand-assembled rather than welded, producing a superior chrome finish. Higher standards in plating techniques were set to provide a chrome trim that would last unblemished for years. Hand-fitted leather goes into interiors of every car. Not just the prototypes, but every Continental made goes out for a severe road test. And the results of the test will be checked down to the performance of every bolt. So this is the way it happened. Over a period of more than 4 years, the concept of modern formal styling came to life, growing from rough designers, engineers, and stylist sketches to a specially designed plant. And with it, new products, new jobs, carrying on a tradition of progress. And here, tradition is brought forward ready for tomorrow.